Good evening. Tonight I thought that I would read you a little bedtime story to try to help you relax and maybe even fall asleep if that's what you want. Now, as far as stories go, I'll admit it's not a particularly exciting one. It's not filled with fantastic adventures, but rather revolves around a quite ordinary little bunny who had come to make his home in a quite ordinary shoe. More specifically, it was an old and quite worn brown leather boot sitting in the long thick grass where the vast forest ends and makes way for an equally vast stretch of big open fields. And the boot was in fact quite stuck where it sat, sunk deep into a patch of mud that had long since dried, cementing it firmly in its place where its owner at some point in a distant past had most likely surrendered their struggle with the mud and abandoned the footwear for good. But while its use as a shoe may as such now be dubious at best, with its big gaping hole in the side of its heel, it instead had now made for a much better home for a tired little bunny who had stumbled upon it one cold stormy night, seeking shelter within from the wind and the rain. The next morning after, with the storm now receded, the bunny's first thought was to keep moving on. But there was something about this particular boot that seemed so cozy, so sturdy and safe, that as the bunny sat down on a branch at the edge of the field and watched the morning sun rise, he decided to make it his home. When he had rested and fed on some wild little vegetables that were growing nearby, he started to work on improving his house. The first thing he did was to poke little holes on opposite sides the whole way up the shaft of the boot, through which he then poked some strong little twigs and managed to create something of a spiraling staircase from the bottom floor at the heel and all the way up to the very top, where before that first day had passed he had even found time to construct a small platform on which he could sit at the top of his boot and watch as the evening sun set, draping the forest and fields in a warm orange glow. He hopped down the stairs, quite proud of his work, crawled in the toe of the boot, and fell into a happy, contented, deep sleep. The days went on like that for a while, and the bunny stayed busy improving his home. By breaking and gnawing small branches and twigs and gluing with pine sap and tying with strings made from roots, he kept finding ways to make everything wanted or needed, and soon had both bedroom and kitchen installed in his boot, complete with a small dining table and some branch stumps for stools, a front door, and even a bed with soft pillows and sheets made from thick woven leaves. The bunny was happy in his new little home, which was warm, snug and safe, and filled with enough food that could last many winters to come, and he really saw nothing at all much worth complaining about. But some days, with no one to share in the fruits of his labors, his joy and what small little worries there were, he found himself thinking and wondering it may have been nice to have had at least one good friend in this world. A few months went by, and as autumn rolled in, the bunny one night was awakened by noises outside. There were quick little footsteps and rustling of grass. There were knocks at his door, and the tiniest voice under shortness of breath crying out, "Let me in, oh please let me in." The bunny jumped out of his bed and hopped up to the door, and when opened he saw a small field mouse standing outside, exhausted and shaking with fear. There's a cat, the little mouse said between breaths, and pointing a small trembling arm to the forest from which she had come. Wait, said the bunny, before you come in, run out a short bit in the field, then come back the same way that you ran, or else he will trace your scent to my door and know that you're hiding in here. With a quick nod, the mouse hurried off some small ways past the edge of the grass and into the field, then came back just as he was told and ran in through the door as quick as he could and collapsed on the floor. The bunny then quickly closed his door and bolted it shut, and hopped up his stairs as fast as he could to the platform high up in the shaft of the boot to find out if his plan would have worked. Sure enough, within moments a big black cat with bright yellow eyes burst out from the forest and came running towards them. But tracking the scent of the mouse, he took little notice of a worn leather boot at the side of the path, and just as the bunny had planned, kept running on far into the fields, in confusion changing directions here and there, and eventually disappearing off into the pitch-black dark of the night. Relieved that the threat was now gone, the bunny hopped down to the mouse, who was tired and weak but eternally grateful to the bunny for opening his door and saving his life. They sat down at the table while the bunny offered the tired little mouse some food, and talked for a while by the light of a candle he had earlier made from some wax he had found. But the hour was late and both very tired, and so the bunny decided to share his big cozy bed with the mouse, curling up at each end with their sleepy little heads resting on a soft big pillow of leaves. I like it here, said the mouse to the bunny. Do you think that maybe I could stay for a while? You can stay as long as you like, said the bunny to the mouse, who buried his head deep into the pillow and closed his tired little eyes with a smile. Good night, bunny, said the mouse. Good night, mouse, said the bunny, and then they both fell asleep.